Hey, welcome to Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. In this two-part series, we sit down and talk with Captain Lee Majors from the Leon County Sheriff's Office. The Leon County Sheriff's Office has operated helicopters in support of law enforcement and public safety efforts in Tallahassee, Leon County, and the surrounding area since 1974. For the first 25 or so years, Leon County Sheriff's Office operated the only law enforcement helicopter in the panhandle. Today, the Leon County Sheriff's Office Aviation Bureau is often modeled by other agencies and is the primary Florida Regional Domestic Security Task Force aviation response unit for the region. Captain Lee Majors is a lifelong resident of Tallahassee, Florida, with a rich history of service in law enforcement aviation and community involvement. His journey with the Leon County Sheriff's Office began as a volunteer in 1985 when he joined the Leon County Sheriff's Office C.B. Posse, steadily rising through the ranks to the position of lieutenant. In 1989, while still serving in the Posse, he volunteered at aviation as a reserve tactical flight officer. Showcasing his dedication to public safety aviation, in January of 2000, his commitment was recognized when he was hired as a full-time employee in the aviation unit. Over the years, Captain Majors has played pivotal roles within the Leon County Sheriff's Office, including being promoted to sergeant in 2014 and assuming command of the aviation unit. Throughout his tenure, Captain Majors has spearheaded numerous initiatives and achievements within the Leon County Sheriff's Office. He was instrumental in procuring and outfitting the new Bell 505 helicopter, making it the first new aircraft purchased for the unit since its inception in 1974. Additionally, he played a key role in establishing the Leon County Sheriff's Office Tallahassee PD Aviation Task Force, expanding the reach and effectiveness of airborne law enforcement operations in the Tallahassee, Leon County area and beyond. Captain Majors' expertise extends beyond the Leon County Sheriff's Office, as he is recognized as a subject matter expert in airborne law enforcement operations nationally. He has lent his technical and safety guidance to numerous agencies, assisting them with aviation unit startups and equipment procurement. Captain Majors is a pilot with over 5,600 hours of logged PIC time. He holds FAA certificates as an airline transportation pilot, flight instructor for helicopters and single-engine land and sea airplanes. He's an instrument flight instructor and advanced ground school instructor, among others. Outside of his professional endeavors, Captain Majors is actively involved in various organizations and community initiatives. He serves on the board of directors for the Airborne Public Safety Association, where he currently holds the position of treasurer. He also volunteers with organizations such as the Experimental Aircraft Association, Lively Technical College Airframe and Power Plant School Occupational Advisory Council, and the Boy Scouts of America. Captain Lee Majors' dedication to aviation safety, law enforcement, and community service has made a lasting impact on the public safety aviation community worldwide. Thank you to our sponsors, Astronautics Corporation of America, Traca Systems, and Greenwich Aero Group.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. The Hangar Z podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Join your host, John Gray, Jeff Ratkovich, and Jack Shanley.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Down by here. Looks like they're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, through the shotgun, through something out. Grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
4 on the stop. You're in custody.
Good advising code 4 on the stop.
It's important to have a program like that in place where you can generate reports, customize reports. So if command comes back and says, can you show us the last 2 months what you guys have done? You can pretty quickly pull that data. We had a paid system for a while, and then we realized we were paying too much. So our city IT department came up with a spreadsheet program that was pretty good, and it allowed us to do that. Jack, can you talk about what you guys did at LAPD when you were there as far as tracking that data?
Yeah, it was all computerized. It at one time, it was, when I first got there, it was manually inputted, where it was all handwritten logs, and then someone in admin would have to add things up and input them into a spreadsheet. But that became computerized, obviously, and it has categories, and but probably not enough categories. And we talked about this recently with Mike Daly on the audit episode, where one of the things that the auditor said, the controller said, was that we don't track very well. Well, we track very well, but are there things that we could track better? And the controller didn't say any specifics about, well, you should track this. And that was my complaint. If you want to say, well, they're not tracking things well. All right, so what do you want to see? What is it that a controller wants to see? What is it that the chief wants to see? Maybe it's something different than what the captain of the unit wants to see, or the sergeant or the lieutenant. So we should get input from different sources within the department and even outside the department within the city or jurisdiction and say, well, what other things do you think we should track? And let them tell you, well, I think you should track this. I may say, that's really dumb. Doesn't matter what I think. If they want that stat, what's the big deal? Add it to the program. We're in an age of computers. It's not hard to do that. So I think what you will see is that in the near future, LAPD Air Support will change the way they collect data and the categories they collect it in. Even though I think it is an outstanding program the way they have it, obviously others do not agree. So if they take input and expand it, that's great. You can't collect too much. I mean, if somebody wants that data, let's collect it. It's not a big deal to add a category or to add a checkbox or to say, we want to know about this and track that. Not a big deal. It doesn't cost you anything to add a category. We've talked about this with many guests, and it's good to hear that Lee's on top of this. I mean, with his unit, and all units need to be on top of it. Because I know that not everybody does it very as well as they should. I know that.
And you've got to be proactive with that too. If you think of something that you go, that would be a good stat to keep, somebody else is thinking about that too. One that we added last year as our equipment's gotten better, we do a lot more of investigation type work, especially with the specialty teams and the federal agencies and this type of thing. And we weren't tracking that, but we were spending a lot of flight time out here doing investigation work. So I said, let's track that. It's just, we'll add another box for a tick mark, and then estimate how much time you spent on that flight on that. And at the end of the month, we know how much time we spent. So I'm looking at August of last year, almost half of the flight time was spent doing investigations, which doesn't get the shift report, look at the capture we have, but it's probably part of something huge that you hear about a year from now that we won't be mentioned in, but had an integral
and
part
maybe
of.
The follow-up to that, which I think is great. That's a great example of what we were just talking about. Just adding a category when you see the need. Well, there was a need. Add it. And maybe you go one step further and say, all right, even a year from now, maybe we got to find a way to connect those two things so that when there is this mass arrest of this burglary ring 6-8 months later, you can say, and by the way, this much flight time was spent with that investigated crew to lead to that. And here's the result on these 6 arrests. We get an assist on that. Even if air support wasn't over the arrest, you know what I mean? It's just one more thing that it's not that hard to track. You find a way to connect it, and it gives you data so that when that controller comes knocking on the door, and they all come knocking at the door and say, well, we're spending a lot of money on you guys. You just bought this new 505. And yeah, but look at this. Whammo. You throw these numbers at them, and you'll knock their socks off because of all the things you're involved in. But you can document it, and it's accurate, and it has this wide range of topics that you can track. It all benefits your unit for when you want another 505 or you want another gimbal, or upgraded this or that. You can get that stuff because you have this value, that you can show with your stats. It's so important.
And again, back to, you create the product, and they know about the product, and the support will come. If there's a product and they want it, the support will come.
You said something that I liked when it comes to stats is just being proactive. We've talked about different kinds of proactivity, and this is one. It's really important. I feel like a lot of times, especially when it comes to documentation, you kind of do what's always been done because that's always the way it's been done, and you don't look at it from a proactive point of view. And like Jack, you brought up going to the controller's office or the accounting office. It's like, hey, what information would be helpful for you guys to show what we're doing? So being proactive in that, I think, is a critical part. And I like that you just referred to it as that, because that's exactly what it is. So
it is.
Thanks for kind of going down this path with us for a little bit. I think it's important. It's an important conversation to continue having as we go, because, like you guys, you have your own programs that are really valuable, and we want other folks to hear about it so they can kind of implement those same policies and procedures with their programs. Jack had brought up the 505, so I'd kind of like to hop into that now. You guys, can you talk about how you guys started with the OH-58s and then how you were able to get the support to eventually go into the 505 and what that looks like for you guys?
Well, to take that back a little further, we didn't actually start with an OH-58. We started with Bell 47s back in the day, which were military surplus. I've got a copy of the newspaper article where they drove with a trailer to Davis-Monthan and picked up the first one and brought it back in 1974 and started the unit. We then moved from that into Jet Rangers and had 2 Jet Rangers for a long time. Then all the OH-58s came on the market, and we were one of the big winners in that. We got a bunch of airframes and a bunch of parts. So we got rid of one of the Jet Rangers, kept one civilian aircraft so we could do those types of things with it, and operated those 58s for a while. Then some number of years ago, we could see that the value of all that surplus equipment, it was getting harder to find some parts. Rotor blades were getting harder to find. What we had on the shelf was becoming less valuable every day to us because it had been superseded and had mods done. And, I remember I had something out for overhaul and they needed a fuel nozzle. Well, great. I got a dozen of them on the shelf, still in the box. And send them to them, and they're like, well, yeah, but that's so old, there's been so many mods done to it that it's going to cost you more to use that one than to buy a new one type thing. So we could see that writing on the wall and got out of the surplus business back into an all-civilian Jet Ranger fleet. So we operated three civilian Jet Rangers for a period of time. As we've increased the work we're doing and the amount of flight time and made ourselves more valuable and essential, what I found was that I had 2 aircraft that I could move cameras and searchlights between to keep a fully functional aircraft. The 3rd aircraft did not have all that capability on it. It was just stripped down light that we do. You can transport people, do training, do mosquito control. If you had to do a SWAT insertion, you would use that aircraft and whatnot. But I needed to outfit it to be able to put into that mix too. Because, if you got 2, you got 1, and sometimes 3 isn't even enough. So I wanted the capability to use all of them. What I couldn't wrap my head around was how I'm going to spend, a couple $100,000 to provision a 50-year-old airframe to be able to do that with. I couldn't wrap my head around good money doing that. So I went to command staff and said, it's time that we start replacing some of this equipment. I need to replace that one. Made my case, and again, because we were producing the product, they said, yes, that's good. We'll find a way to do that. And the city and the county split that cost and bought that new airframe for us.
Yeah, there's quite a few agencies that I've talked to that operate like you guys. They do a really, really good job, and they've come across a lot of resistance to getting new airframes and upgrading their current capabilities. What advice would you have for folks that are in a position like you where they're trying to prove the value and worth of investing the money into these new airframes?
We keep coming right back to the same thing. If the product's there, they're going to give you the tools that you need to do the job, to keep producing that product. As far as getting new aircraft, the one that we got rid of was 50 years old. The 2 sitting out here now are 30 years old. How my airplane was older than that, but when is too old? Too old. At what point do you replace it? When we had a 50-year-old aircraft, other than the old Bel Air that they drove in the parades, that was the oldest piece of equipment that the sheriff had. I'm pretty sure we don't have a motor grader or a dump truck on the road in the county that was 50 years old. So it just took having that vision. This is what we need. This is the equipment we need. And then don't just say, hey, we need this and get a no, sorry, that's too much. Have a vision, have a plan, and keep working that plan and give them the product and they'll support it.
I think back to my time with Eric Widener as my supervisor. He was really savvy when it came to understanding the ins and outs of the relationships needed to make these things successful. So he spent a lot of time kind of getting them to understand what exactly the air support program does, because a lot of these folks, they sit in an office downtown or in a county and don't really understand what the operation means. They just see the numbers that are attached to it and don't see the value of the program. So he was really good about developing his relationships, showing them the value of the program. Then when it came time for us to ask for a new aircraft, it wasn't a surprise to them. They understood the value of the program. So I felt like he was really good at developing and fostering these relationships, which are important, I believe at least.
The relationships are not just with the people that control the money or have the say-so. It's with everybody. So when, dealing with your fiscal people, with your P cards or your travel request or travel settle-ups, if you're the groups that they never have to call and ask for the information because you got it, you turned it in, it was right, you were proactive and walked in there and said, hey, I got this coming, it's going to be a little weird, let's figure this out. When it comes time to need something or something that's a little unusual, which everything we do is a little bit different than everybody else in the agency, they're willing to help you because they know that you're doing right. You're the ones that they want everybody to model how you're doing it, from supply, from fleet, from fiscal, just everywhere. If you're the group that's doing the right thing, you're going to get the support.
Absolutely. It's a really underappreciated position in the city government is, working in accounting and those types of purchasing departments. Remember one of the things that Eric would do, would go to AppsCon or any of the trade shows. He'd make an effort to go to MD, go to the OEMs, pick up a calendar as simple as it might be, and deliver it to somebody in purchasing. Like, just again, fostering those relationships. They don't get that appreciation from other places. So little things go a long ways when it comes to that. And there's no short supply of any of that swag at the conferences. So I highly encourage folks to make an effort to build those relationships in advance of a request, because you don't want to try and foster a relationship when you need something that should be built and fostered way before that.
Absolutely. We've got a meeting schedule. We've got a lot of new people in fiscal, and they are coming out here for a meet and greet in a couple of weeks. A lot of them have never dealt with aviation, and they're going to come out and see the operation. And, when I talk about this is what this means. In my job, I come here and work every day, and, I do my thing. But really, most of my work is 3, 4, 5 years in the future. That's where I'm doing my work. And a lot of it, I can do it because of those relationships that I'm building every day. The positive things that happen every day let me get that success in the future.
As much as I want to ask you a little bit more about the 505, this is a perfect time to ask you about this, Lee. You appear to have, from what you've said, from what I've read, from what I've seen, you've got a sheriff that supports you and a sheriff that supports aviation. Tell us about how valuable that is to you as an aviation manager, where you're in charge of that unit and into getting equipment and doing the things that you need to do.
You protect and defend. So do we. Astronautics' proven cybersecurity, connectivity, and upgrade solutions support helicopter OEMs and operators worldwide. When the mission matters, you need to trust that your avionics systems are secure, connected, and reliable, because lives depend on it. Continue to protect and defend. So will we. Contact Astronautics at www.astronautics.com.
Well, and that's huge. He can see the value in what we do, but because we've produced that product and showed it to him. Yeah, I do a lot of the legwork in the future and keep plugging away at our strategic goals to make these things happen. But it's his strategic goals. It's his plans. And when he can see what we do, when he can see how we make officers and the public safer by being there and being overhead, and we can produce the stats where guys are going to jail that need to, and people are being found, it's not hard for him to get behind that and support it and be willing to go to the city or county commission and say, look, we need the support for these guys. Look at the good work they're doing. We need to do more of this.
His support comes across it's very genuine, in the things that I watched and things that I read. Sheriff McNeil came across as, wow, he really does support Lee out at that aviation unit, and he does support that unit and what they do. But that comes back to you and to your people that are working with you, doing the job right, so that the sheriff can say that with confidence and not go, wow, I got to make this expensive unit look good. How can I do that? Well, here's all the ammunition. He's got plenty of ammunition to do that with, and he does it. That's the important part. Not not everybody has a chief or a sheriff that is as enthusiastic about aviation as Sheriff McNeil. So that's good for you and good for your unit and good for the citizens of Leon County too.
I appreciate his support more than anything, and really, it's these guys that are here doing this job every day that make it easy for him to give us that support because of the product. Yeah.
You brought up the 505 again. I would like to go back and talk about that because seemingly for me, it's a big upgrade. I got one opportunity to do a demo flight in a 505, and I was really impressed with not only the visibility of the aircraft, but the power that it had, being a relatively small airframe. Can you talk about some of the upgrades it offered you guys and what your experience has been in the 505?
How did we end up in that airframe? I said we had to get rid of a 50-year-old aircraft. We're going to replace it with something. Here's our chance to get something newer. I didn't know what it was going to be at that time. So like anything else being analytical, I had built a spreadsheet with airframes from all of the manufacturers and had on my bar graph had a line for all of the things that we wanted to see and kind of played those out to see which ones checked the most boxes. Quite frankly, this was in 2019. That airframe was still relatively new. It was still brand new, and it wasn't my first choice. But when I really started scratching my head on that and going, why? Because it checked a lot of boxes. Why did you not look at that? It dawned on me because I didn't know anything about it. Being new, there was just no experience with it. So I went to a Heli Expo, and I spent I had all my notes of the things I needed to answer my questions, and I spent a couple of days crawling over the airframe and talking to people and answering my questions, and then went in a flight in it and said, we need to give this thing a shake. At that point, there was only 2 of them in the country that were being used, and those were in California. So not a lot of law enforcement, people to talk to about it. So that's how we came into looking at it. It checked all the boxes. We didn't have to build a new building to put it in. Our old Jet Rangers do everything we want them to do 99% of the time. The problem is we've hung so much equipment on them that now we're so close to the edge of the safety margin that we needed some more horsepower. And one of the really nice things about that airframe is the drivetrain is the same thing that the guys fly every day. So it flies the same. We don't have to have a whole separate training program for that airframe. The numbers are close enough to what the other airframes that they fly. That emergency procedures are almost the same except for throttle manipulation stuff. But it's got 85 more horsepower. So we accomplish that without having to spend twice as much money for a bigger airframe for what we really do every day of the week.
When you went to Heli Expo, see if you can recall this. When you went to Heli Expo and you sat in that 505 for the first time, you got in, sat in that pilot's seat. Do you remember what your first impression was, or what you looked at that jumped out at you where you went, wow, and where it grabbed you?
The 2 big things were the visibility and the room. The shoulder room. It's really a much bigger aircraft cockpit, if you will, where the visibility, where I really saw that was on the first flight. That's one of the first things I've ever been in with even the doors closed. Like you can look around and see behind you. Yeah, I mean, you can't do that in a Jet Ranger with the doors off because of the door posts there. Still a 2-bladed rotor system that I didn't have to build a new hangar to put it in. It gave us the added horsepower we needed with the commonality of everything, and in a current airframe with current safety standards, not 1960 standards like we have in the Jet Rangers.
Nice. That's what I thought you were going to say too, because those are the things that jumped out at me. Visibility and room. It's like, wow, they really did a great job on that, and this is what law enforcement needs. This is a law enforcement patrol aircraft. And because of those 2 things, it just makes a big difference for crews to be better, more comfortable, and more effective and more efficient, and all those things. And visibility, you can never have enough visibility. I mean, it's always an important factor.
Absolutely.
Something else that impressed me when I did the demo flight was the integrated avionics package, the Garmin avionics. Having flown A-Stars, to go from the FLI to the Garmin, the information's displayed on the Garmin. I was really impressed. A lot of information there, really intuitive to read through. So I love that. Similar experience for you, Lee, on the
Yeah, and going from steam gauges, and our Jet Rangers have glass MFDs and heading indicators and whatnot in them now with the Aspen displays that we put in there. But yeah, all of that information, as a flight instructor, that's a whole nother skill to be able to read all of that information and deduce it. But yeah, there's so much information at your fingertips with the audible input from all of that now, all of the cues that you get and the voices that tell you what's going on. I think it makes it all safer, what we do every day.
Yeah, I love that. It's a beautiful ship. Going back to the work that you just did with Lloyd, the photography and videography that captured you guys' program is really cool. So we need to see that come out.
You did a great job.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you talked about the 505 being similar to the Jet Ranger. Jack and I were just talking about that yesterday. I think that's something that's been brought up in the past as far as the handling characteristics of the 505 as compared to the Jet Ranger. So Jack, I feel like you'd be right at home.
Oh yeah, I'd like to fly it. John and I talked about this yesterday, that I saw the 505 when it was being developed at Bell. I was there with a small group from LA, and they showed it to us. It was in a room filled with engineers. They were still working it out, but they sat us in the cockpit, and I mean, this is just an airframe. There's no rotor blades on it. There's nothing. Just sat us in the cockpit, and I went, "Oh my gosh, this is the visibility, the room. There's no broom closet. Oh, God bless America." It was just great. It was a great switch, and it was evident to me right then that this is going to be a platform that's going to fit perfectly for many agencies around this country, and you're the first east of the Mississippi, I believe, and it's great to hear that your feedback is very positive on that product.
With any A model of anything, we've gone through some of those growing pains when you start pushing a new model out there. But Bell and Safran both have been very responsive, and we've been pleased with that.
We sort of touched on your mission profile a little bit ago. Obviously, you guys help with investigations. You work patrol. I'm assuming that's probably the backbone of your operation. Can you talk about some of the other mission profiles you may support?
And a few of them people don't even think about. So airborne use of force has become a big thing as of late. Jack, you remember back when that was a bad thing even to talk about. That was taboo. But we always kept a rifle here. You might throw it in there if you were going on something you needed. And have a history back in the 70s. They stopped a vehicle up on the interstate one night from the aircraft, but it wasn't something we really did. One of the things after I took over, I said we need to either codify this and make a program and train it properly, or not do it. So we had command staff come out, and they said absolutely we need it. What has changed there is, used to be that was too much liability to do. In my mind now, in the litigious society that we're in now, you get somebody in an elevated position that's shooting people, you've got to do that. You've got to, as an agency, you've got aircraft, you've got people, everybody that works here is issued a rifle. Why didn't you stop him? So now I think we have to have that capability now. Hopefully we'll never have to use it, but it's there and we train it. All of the normal things that everybody does, we do. A couple of the things that we do that a lot of people don't do or have never heard about. So our electric utility here in the city is owned by the city of Tallahassee. So our guys patrol their power substations and transmission lines. A couple of things there. They're flying around at night. They've got these all plotted in their computer when they fly over one of the substations. They slew around there and they look at it. They've done this enough that they can spot bad connections that are generating heat, and they pull that video out and they send it to City Electric, and they can go fix it before the power goes out. Save tons of time and money. Or after a storm, when we had Hurricane Michael come through a few years ago, something like that, and we've got transmission lines coming in to the city that are down, they can't fire those back up unless they have inspected every foot of that wire. And we've got transmission lines that run from the Gulf of Mexico all the way to the Georgia state line. So one of the first flights out is always City Electric, to get out there and start getting those lines up, because we can cover all of those lines in minutes that would take them days to get out there and inspect. So that's huge. Another one that there's not many sheriff's offices that do is mosquito control, and that's one of the things how this unit was started 50 years ago. up here in this part of the state, mosquitoes are seasonal. In the winter, we don't get them. In the summer, they're bad. Not like South Florida where you couldn't live if you didn't have mosquito control. And it didn't make sense for mosquito control to hire pilots and buy aircraft and pay for insurance and maintenance for something they would use half the year. So back in the day, the sheriff and the county got together and said, well, let's use the sheriff's aircraft and his pilots that are already there, and mosquito control will put their gear on there and we'll go do mosquito control. So that's what we do. Now, since COVID, that's not really ramped back up a lot, but the capability is still there. And again, we're making the public safer by using the tools that we already have, and it's saving the taxpayers' money because you don't have two agencies operating aircraft. So I've got 3 people here, and me being one of them. We are licensed pest control applicators and licensed aerial applicators. We hold those certificates. One of the things, and this was something that Lloyd was able to capture in his video that we've just recently put in place, is our ability, even though we don't do medevac, our ability, if we had a critical situation and the quickest way to get one of our people or somebody to the hospital is throw them in the back of the aircraft with a SWAT medic and go. We now have just put into place the ability to land at the trauma center. We can communicate with them en route, just like any other EMS aircraft can to tell them what's coming, and we're training that, and they appreciate that, so they get that training out of it. So, that's a couple of the things that most people don't do that we do. That's a little interesting, and the latest thing coming up, being able to do the EMS portion of that.
That's huge considering where we are in this day and age. What you talk about a lot is something that I'm a huge advocate of, is creating partnerships with agencies outside of the police department or outside of the role of the police department. And going back to Eric Widener, he was really good about creating partnerships with economic development, these other agencies within the city that typically aren't associated with law enforcement. You've done that. The example that you talked about with the electric company is something I didn't even consider, and that's genius. Anytime an agency can create more customers and make them more of an essential part of the governmental body that they're working for is huge. So kudos to you.
Yeah, that's way outside the box. Way outside the box. But it's simple. It's easy. You're already there. It just takes a little bit of training for the crews to know what they're looking at. That's a really smart thing. It just adds to the essential part of your unit. And that was really good. I've never heard that one before. That's very good.
And it adds value for the taxpayers. They're getting more for what they're paying, and the city doesn't compensate us for going and doing that. We don't bill them. We can't bill them, but the guys are already turning circles over their equipment. Why not do it? Yeah, it doesn't cost us anything.
The good thing is the day someone questions what you guys are doing, there's going to be a line of folks at the decision maker's office saying, hey, they help me. Everyone's got their hand raised saying they help me. And it's going to be hard to get rid of a program like that. Whereas, folks that aren't diversifying how they work, there's not going to be a line of folks out there to protect them when the time comes. So kudos to you. I love that. That's awesome.
Again, we've circled right back around. Produce the product, document it. There you go. There's no argument.
Absolutely. We kind of skipped over something I want to go back to, and we talk a lot about in the podcast, funny things that have happened and impactful things that have happened in the course of our careers. I'd like to go to you on a memorable incident that you've worked while you're in aviation. Thinking back across all the years you've been there, what's something that was impactful for you that you were a part of in aviation?
Thanks to our sponsor, Tracka Systems. With over 25 years delivering groundbreaking searchlights, stabilized EOIR cameras, mission mapping, and downlinking solutions, Tracka products improve situational clarity and coordination with ground crews, increasing mission safety and effectiveness. Visit trackasystems.com. See clearly, act decisively.
One that I can think of that always comes to mind happened back in 2010, so quite some time ago when I was just a line deputy flying here. We were up over town. I think we responded to an armed robbery or an alarm call or something. It turned out to be nothing. But we were up on tower, and what we couldn't hear on approach was There was a Navy crew in a T-45 that 18 miles southeast of the airport had ejected. And we didn't know until later they had ejected. They were on the ILS. They were getting vectored for the ILS. So they had ejected from 1,000 feet while inverted, which that's probably not a good way to do that. A tower asked us to go over to approach and talk to them. Approach had lost contact with these guys. It was a training aircraft that was, again, shooting that ILS. They had a Coast Guard HC-144 was nearby talking to them, so they vectored them over to come look to see what they could see. They got there and could see 2 parachutes was all that they could see. At the same time, Tom Mallow, one of our APSA members from the Florida Highway Patrol, was doing traffic control up over the interstate. So they turned him and vectored him to that direction. He's 10 miles away. He can see smoke. So he's a little lower. He could see what the Coast Guard crew couldn't. Tower grabbed us and put us over there, and we headed that way. So now you got 3 aircraft stacked up within a matter of minutes working this scene at different altitudes that can see different things. Coast Guard aircraft is talking via radio back to the base. One of the pilots had a phone and called them, so that's how they communicated with them to know they had both survived. One of them had, some minor injuries, but they had survived. So we got there, and all that was visible of this airplane, it had gone nose down in the swamp like a lawn dart. There was 2 feet of the tailpipe sticking out. There was no other airplane visible. And the 2 parachutes were right there within eyeshot of it. So that's how close this was when they ejected and came down there. They were about 5 miles from the closest hard road out in the woods, out in the swamp. We could see them moving, and we made the determination that the quickest way to get these guys out of here, not knowing the extent of their injuries, probably in shock, was for us to do it. Little tiny hole on a trail right there. We landed and picked these guys up. And as we took them to the hospital to drop them off, we had another helicopter from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission came and started working the talking people in to this scene. And it took a while, the better part of an hour, to get a vehicle finally into this scene and get it secured. But, we've got 4 different agencies that were working this immediately, and they're miles out in the woods, and we still were able to get these 2 guys to the hospital in less than an hour. Luckily, neither one of them had any major injuries. Yeah, that was one of those where all of the pieces to the puzzle, all of the resources, all of the agencies came together for a terrific outcome.
Yeah, that's awesome. What a cool incident. You highlight the benefit of working well with other agencies and knowing other agencies. A lot of agencies now are doing training fly-ins where you'll host agencies from your region to come in and network and develop these partnerships. So when something like that happens, it's almost automatic that someone's going to come. And while you'd probably go anyways, it's nice to have first name basis and kind of understand the capabilities of these folks that are coming in to help. So that's really cool.
And all of those meetings like that are helping somebody with something. When we go to APSCON, when we go to Heli Expo, when we go to a safety seminar or the safety stand twos that we're doing, every one of those things has some component of building a relationship and knowing a guy. And when I need something, I know somebody I can call. That's a monster part of what we
Absolutely.
do.
Yeah. I'd like to kind of build upon that. A lot of what you've done as a leader from our conversation that I can tell has created value within your unit. That's allowed your program to continue to grow and evolve and become bigger and better of what you're doing. Can you talk about how you were able to create the aviation task force and what that looks like between you guys and Tallahassee?
That's huge. And, I talk about stay on the course, and your job's 3 or 4 or 5 years in the future, and you just have to have a strategic plan and keep doing it. Well, this was one of these things. And this really was 47 years in the making. It's been talked about since the unit was started. So what we did, I floated this when I saw the time was right. I'd already told the sheriff that one of my plans was for us to be 24 hours, and part of that obviously was going to be to have more personnel. And one of the ways that I saw that we could do that is partner with the police department and have them give us manpower, have them give us TFOs, if you will, that we could train and would come here full time. The sheriff got with the chief and they made it happen. The time was right. I saw the opportunity. We put it out there, made it happen. So this happened right when COVID was kicking off, 2020. and they sent me over 2 guys. Didn't ask me who I wanted, just they had a couple of guys. They had 3 pilots on staff, so we got 2 of them. As it turns out, we couldn't have selected better guys. Both of them are military pilots, go-getters. They're both working today, as a matter of fact. And what I wanted out of that was 2 things. I wanted more manpower so we could push our night shift later into the night, because we know a lot of our customers on the other side of the fence are out in the middle of the night. So that allowed us to push that night shift until 4 in the morning. And these guys they make their money a lot of times between 2 and 4 or 5 in the morning. The other thing that I had hoped for was to increase that communication on the street level between the agencies. A lot of times you have back and forth between agencies, and the communication's not the best. That's one thing Sheriff McNeil has done is fix that problem. But on the street level, guys over at the city, it's not their unit, right? They know we're here, but we don't know how to call them. Well, now they got a guy, and that has the benefits of that have been even better than I could have hoped for as far as increasing that. And again, that makes us more valuable. They're getting the product because they can call and ask for it. It's one big, huge agency now. So what that looks like now is these guys come to work here full time. They're employed by the police department. They answer to them, but they come here full time. They're full-time members. They're sworn deputy sheriffs. When they're flying our aircraft, they do so as a deputy sheriff working for Sheriff McNeil.
When it comes to shared responsibility for calls for service, for example, if you have two calls of similar priority, is there something in place to determine who gets what service, or is that just determined based on need and where you guys are?
There's nothing written about that. There's nothing that says somebody gets priority over the other one. We've all triaged calls. We know just today I heard them. They were on some shots had been fired in a neighborhood, and on the other side of town, you had somebody in a foot pursuit, right? We've done this enough that you can tell our shots fired thing that we took off on. That seemed hot, but now that's kind of run its course a little bit, and now we're kind of in a lull here. So let's run over here and help the guys that are chasing somebody through the woods. That's the biggest priority. If canines work in a track going out through the woods, they're probably not going to leave them and go to anything else, because the priority is the safety of those guys and staying ahead of them so they don't walk into an ambush. So it's really up to the crew. But you get, y'all done this enough to know that you get pretty good at knowing which one's the one we should go to right this minute, which one we can come back to. So we leave that up to the crew. I try not to micromanage that too much.
Yeah, that's great.
What took 47 years, Lee? Was there something that was, when you said that, the thought was there was something blocking it? Was it just the right people that were in charge as chief and sheriff? What was the stumbling block, or what was the thing that allowed you to do this, which is really a good thing for everyone? Is there one thing, or was it a bunch of stuff?
Right people, right time, right positions. And again, you have to have those, you see those opportunities, have your plan, always have a couple of plans over here on the shelf. And when you see the opportunity, use them.
Because this is a common theme in many jurisdictions where city, county, where they don't get together. And they should. And then there's other units that have done that, where they've combined with personnel from multiple jurisdictions. Pasadena comes to mind in that realm. And it's smart. It's just a smart thing to do. You're supporting them. Why not have some of them involved in it? It's just so smart. It benefits everyone.
A lot of the agencies may not be able to afford an aviation program by themselves, but in partnership with other agencies and jurisdictions, you absolutely could do that. And so it's neat to see that, be successful in how you guys are doing that. Something I'm interested to dig into, being that you're the leader you are, what have you found that's been successful when it comes to the selection of TFOs and pilots? How are you guys doing that?
From anybody that's done this, for any amount of time, that how that's done really has a lot to do with the size of the agency. If you're San Diego or LAPD and you've got 100 guys that work there that are pilots that came to work there to get in that unit, you got a bigger pool and you can be a little more choosy. Where a smaller agency, you may have to take who you can get. And we talked about recruiting and retention. that's a big deal. You may have to do that. We've been fortunate enough that the folks that we've hired to do that job that have come from other places, we've been able to offer them value in coming here. They can see the program that we've got. We're now getting where we're offering, respectable pay to come and do that, and the benefits are, as good as you can get working for a government agency like this and state retirement. As far as selecting, just recently the guys started talking about, how are we going to select TFOs if, the next round of people that try to come in here, if we don't hire from outside. The beautiful thing about hiring from outside and taking somebody that's already an airborne cop, you teach him your way and you teach him the boundaries, and, you've got a ready-made product that it doesn't take years and years to develop, which we know that's, it takes that long to develop somebody to really do this job well. But the guys have really started looking around at some other agencies and trying to put together some ideas on how we'll model that selection program. We've seen all, like Texas DPS, excellent, way that they call people out and come up with their new TFOs. We probably won't be able to go to that extreme, but we'll use some of the ideas that they have to be able to do that. And like you said, everybody can't do it. The guy that seems like he might be the guy, once you get him up there, he just might not be his thing. So it may be the sleeper that you're not really considering, but when you get done, might be the guy.
That's right. I've seen both of those over and over and over, where you think, I don't think this person's going to do it. And they end up being a superstar. And then you say, wow, this person's going to be the ace of the base. And they fall flat on their face. It's hard. It's really hard. You can't, there's no crystal ball. That's for darn sure. Because it's just so unique. The job is so unique. You have to find, I love that you said that we're searching other departments and taking things from them, and DPS being one of them. That's a good thing, because selection and training is a huge topic in law enforcement aviation. And Mike Calhoun, with his new book, that has gone a long way to helping with that. It's a complicated issue, really complicated, because it's a unique job.
It is.
Like you said, there's kind of no cookie cutter way of doing it, because everyone's department's different sized, and there's different HR requirements and all kinds of things.
That's right. You got to find what works for you.
And I have talked to a lot of people about that. I've mentored a lot of younger people that want to get into this business, and that's what I tell them is that there's no one way to do it. You just keep plugging along. A bigger agency's probably not where you're going to walk in off the street. Smaller agency, you might be successful with that, but you got to get your start somewhere.
It's been an awesome conversation. I don't want to take up your whole day, but there's a few more things that I want to touch on before we close out. One of is I would like to talk about APSA and kind of what's happening in APSA. Maybe a little bit of a preview for AppsCon 2024 if we can. So can you kind of fill us in on what's going on there?
Thanks to our sponsor, Summit Aviation, a full-service provider for business, government, parapublic, and military aviation, specializing in maintenance, modifications, avionics, interiors, and paint. Discover more at summit-aviation.com.
A couple of things just association-wise. So I serve currently as the treasurer of the association. I'm in my second term there. I've had the pleasure, I've been, I guess, a member for almost 30 years now. I've served as a assistant deputy director, regional director, and now 2 terms as treasurer. We have elections all the time. We've got elections coming up now. I would encourage anyone who wants to learn a bit about this industry, it's already working in this industry, to run for one of the posts. It's very gratifying. We always need a younger, newer vision of where we think this is going. The world has changed, and we have to respond to those changes. Our new training program manager, Dan Knight, we are so happy to have him. He is going to do great work for us. We're looking forward to working with him. Yeah.
Dan is a wonderful guy. I mean, he's just a super guy, but he has a lot of experience, and I was really thrilled to see that he's in that position. He'll be great there.
And we're excited about that too. We see good things with that program in the future. So you mentioned AppsCon 2024. So we'll be back in Houston, Texas again this year, July 29th through August 3rd. We actually were scheduled to be in Houston in 2020 for the 50th APSCON, but COVID shut that down. That was going to be a big 50th year anniversary, and a lot was set up around that, but that got shut down. But we're going back there. We rescheduled that for this year. Interestingly enough, Houston will be our first city that we've been to 5 times. So this will be the 5th time in Houston. Was supposed to have been the 50th anniversary. So that's kind of interesting there. One of the things that we started doing a couple of years ago was combining APSCON and APSCON Unmanned, or that's what we call it now, combining those two things together. And I talked to a lot of the unmanned aircraft folks that were in Orlando last year, and how they've liked that. And this is really one of the only places we can get both of those public safety groups together to share information. And they seem to really appreciate that they appreciated that we would have them there and talk with them, and that's really a value added that we're bringing to that. For this year, we'll have the unmanned offerings again there. I think you'll see more of that. In talking to Dan Schwartzback the other night, I think there's some really cool unmanned stuff that we're trying to get happen this year that we're trying to get in there that'll kind of be real new and innovative there. You know, our awards and scholarship program. So if you're working in law enforcement and want to recognize some of your crew, your maintenance crew, your safety folks, put them in for an award. That's a real gratifying thing. My maintenance manager was the Technician of the Year last year for the great work that he's been doing. Scholarships. We have a huge number of scholarships that we give out every year to the children of our members that are going into college. A couple of exceptions to, there's a couple of college-age scholarships, but huge scholarships there that we give away to our members. There's a value added to your membership. Put into it's not difficult. My daughter received one years ago before I was on the board. My son, he kind of got screwed a little bit because I'm on the board and he couldn't put in for it. So, that's what happened. But awards and scholarships open February 1st, and the application period runs through May 1st for APSCON in 2024. I highly encourage everybody to do that. As far as APSCON goes, we know 2025, we've got Phoenix lined up. We'll be back in Phoenix. 2026 will be in the Southeast. It's not, we don't have a contract signed yet, but it will be in the Southeast U.S. And 2027 we'll be back in Reno. So we're trying to move this West Coast, Central, East Coast, move it around the country because, as we know, different people can justify travel in different places. You mentioned some of the get-togethers and whatnot, networking. We've got our safety stand twos that we do in person and online. If you want to put together a safety stand too, get with the office and tell them what topics you want, and we'll put together the instructors. We'll put together a program, get the vendors to come and facilitate making that happen for you. We've still got our safety seminar coming up again down here in Florida. So if you can't travel to an APSCON, you can go to a safety seminar. Our on-the-road courses, the webinars, the online meetings for maintenance, natural resources, safety, SAR, and UAS stuff. It's really mind-boggling the amount of interaction and training that the association offers to our members for what, little bit we charge for that. So I encourage everybody to get involved in all of those things. Get on the website and look at everything that's there.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. I think for career development, education, training, and networking are the 3 most important aspects of that career development. And all 3 of those things happen at APSCON, happen at HAI, ECHO, all the different organizations that have an annual conference. And it's really neat to see you guys at HAI and the partnership with PavCon and the different places that you guys are partnering. Because in my mind, it's not a competition. You guys really work together, which it's apparent you guys are doing that.
I'm glad you just mentioned Heli Expo again. We will again this year be doing the Rescue Summit the Monday before Heli Expo floor opens up. So that was hugely attended last year, a big hit, and we'll be doing that again this year. So we'll have a booth there. Stop by and speak. Any questions or information on any of these programs, certainly stop by and talk to the staff that'll be there.
Absolutely. Last thing I'd like to bring up before we close out is just the conversation on mentorship. You've talked about that a little bit throughout this deal. It's evident just in your actions that you're heavily involved in mentoring, whether it's a young kid in youth development type programs or someone who's already in aviation or even in law enforcement, to continue to motivate them to grow and do better. Can you give some suggestions on mentorship and ways that people who have that heart to serve and heart to mentor, ways for them to get involved in the ways that you have?
When my children were little, in the youth sports and all of those things that everybody else has, and the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts, and we've done all of that stuff. What I get pleasure out of now is somebody, like you said, that may want to break into this business. And there's been several people that, over a number of years that I've spoken to, and they'd call and ask me questions or seek me out at an APSCON. Hey, can you go have lunch with me? I'm here, and give them some pointers of a lot of the things that we've just talked about here, and to see them finally land that job. One of my guys I got here, we interviewed him some years ago, and he didn't make the cut. And he called and asked me, he says, "Hey, if you don't mind me asking, I'm trying to make myself better and see how I can break into this industry. Why did I get passed over?" And I said, "Well, here's what it is. Here was the things. Here's what it was. See, fix that, and you'll be better next time." So, and actually it works for me now. We came around again, and we were looking for people. And I said, "You need to apply. I think it'd be a good fit." I really get some enjoyment out of being able to, I've done this a long time, and I've treaded a lot of water, and I love to be able to pass some of those lessons on to somebody that's young, that's trying to come up and get in this. I do get a lot of enjoyment out of that.
Yeah, that's huge. Love that. Jack, any thoughts or questions before we close out?
I have a couple thoughts. The one thing that really jumped out at me today, talking to Lee, is that it takes a good leader within a unit to really care about where that unit goes. And Lee, it's clear to me that you and the people that are around you, I understand that, but you have made the Leon County Sheriff's Aviation essential and not a luxury. And that's a topic that we've talked about a lot here. And that is crystal clear with your unit. Good for you. Thank you for doing that, not only for your unit's sake, but certainly for the people of Leon County. They're benefiting every day by the things that you've seen, the vision that you had, the pushing for more equipment, more people, more hours. It's all good stuff, but it takes somebody to do it. And you certainly did that. Yes, I know you had support. Yes, I know you have good people around you and under you, but it still takes somebody to really push that. And good for you, Lee. I'm been very impressed with everything I saw in that area, and that's an important topic these days. So, and thanks for taking the time, because I know you're a busy guy. Thanks for taking the time and joining us. We really appreciate it.
I appreciate y'all having me and being able to share. Thank you.
Just want to echo what Jack said. If ever there was a case study to suggest what a leader should look like in public safety aviation, I would say you're that person that everyone should look at and emulate, as far as, how do you become a leader, and how do you select a leader who's going to grow a program and create value in that program, one that, like Jack says, is essential and not a luxury. So again, kudos to you for the heart you have for the industry, our profession, and the desire to go out and serve and do something bigger than yourself. It's a lot of people are good at doing things that benefit them, but you've gone beyond that and are benefiting, the next generation. And that's important, because, we all want to leave the thing that we do better than when we found it. So,
and part of what I'm working on here, I'm nearing the end of my career at this point here, and a big part of what I'm working on now is the succession. What am I gonna give these guys? Anybody that's heard me talk has probably heard this, and but it's still a great analogy. I said I want, when I retire, it to be like Olympic curling. I'm going to let go of the rock, and it's just going to keep going at the same speed, and it's keep going straight, and the new guys are just going to start brooming it and keeping it going in the right direction. And that's how I hope to leave this.
That's great.
That's how I'm gonna retire one day.
Cool. Good stuff, Lee.
Yeah,
that's really good.
Lee, thank you very much for joining us, for taking time out of your busy schedule. Like Jack said, I know you're a busy man. I've heard your phone ring a bunch of times, and you've.
Sorry, I thought I had those.
No, you're
off.
good. You're a busy man. So again, we appreciate it, and we'll look forward to seeing you at HAI and at APSCON in the summer.
Excellent.
So, thank you again, and we'll catch you later.
Very good. See y'all then. Y'all have a good afternoon.
All right.
Thanks,
see ya.
Lee.
Bye now.
This is the end of the two-part series with Captain Lee Majors. Stand by for an Ask the Expert session after a word from our sponsors. Cheers.
You protect and defend. So do we. Astronautics' proven cybersecurity, connectivity, and upgrade solutions support helicopter OEMs and operators worldwide. When the mission matters, you need to trust that your avionics systems are secure, connected, and reliable because lives depend on it. Continue to protect and defend. So will we. Contact Astronautics at www.astronautics.com. Thanks to our sponsor, Traca Systems. With over 25 years delivering groundbreaking searchlights, stabilized EOIR cameras, mission mapping, and downlinking solutions. Traca products improve situational clarity and coordination with ground crews, increasing mission safety and effectiveness. Visit tracasystems.com. See clearly, act decisively. Thanks to our sponsor, Summit Aviation, a full-service provider for business, government, parapublic, and military aviation, specializing in maintenance, modifications, avionics, interiors, and paint. Discover more at summit-aviation.com.
Thank you for supporting the sponsors who make these conversations possible. For this Ask the Expert session, one of our listeners submitted the following question. When it comes to interpreting suspect behavior as a TFO, is there a tell you've observed that's an obvious sign that a person is evading detection or contact? For an answer to this question, I called Nick Minks, a Hangar Z co-host and owner of Tactical Flying. Tactical Flying specializes in providing airborne law enforcement units with the most advanced thermal imaging and aircrew tactical training available.
John Gray.
Nick Minks, how you doing, sir?
Very well. How are you?
Good, man. Hey, I'm calling. We had a Ask the Expert session that I wanted to record with you. We had one of our listeners write in with a question that I feel like you're uniquely qualified to answer. So I'll just ask the question.
I don't know about that, but okay.
I'll just ask the question and be interested to hear what your response is. So the question is, when it comes to interpreting suspect behavior as a TFO, is there a tell you've observed that is an obvious sign that this person's evading detection or contact?
That's like a Facebook relationship status. It's complicated. How much time do I have is probably the better answer. So I'll say it depends. Yes, everyone has a tell. The issue is trying to identify their specific tell. And so it's like, ultimately what we're trying to do in law enforcement is it's like a professional game of poker. Whether it's an interaction of somebody on the street, we're always gauging, is somebody lying to us? Well, how do you do that from, 1,000 feet in the air if you can't have that face-to-face interaction? And so, a poker player will tell you, like, what they're doing is they're baselining everybody. And if you've studied human behavior, microexpressions, like, it essentially become a human polygraph. I'm going to ask you questions, and questions that I know you don't lie about. Like, I'm going to say, is your name John Gray? Yes, it is. Okay, well, I just watched everything about you, your facial expressions, your eyes, your hands, did you shift in your seat? Like, I suddenly just baselined your behavior in a question that I don't expect you to lie about. You're like, I know you. I've known you for years. You're not going to lie about your name. But now if I say, did you go to the gym this morning like you said you were going to? And I see something different. And you say, yes, of course I did. And I see something different. You flick your eyes to the left or up, or, you purse your lips a little bit, or you shift in your seat, or, your left pinky finger suddenly twitches. Well, that gets stored away in my mind. And so I've now seen the difference between what you do when you're under pressure and what you do when you're not under pressure. And so the issue is, how do we identify that from the air? And so I'll tell you that the truly great TFOs are the ones who can do this and it's through years and years of experience have honed their study of human behaviors in the moment. So it takes time and practice and thousands and thousands and thousands of reps of looking at people. Now, that's not the reps of looking at suspects, but that's thousands and thousands of reps of looking at people. And so, like, imagine you're driving in your car. For anybody, you're driving in your car, you're on duty, you're in your patrol car. What are you doing ideally, what are you doing at every car that drives by you in the opposite direction? There's your thousands of reps. I picture Neo from The Matrix, Keanu Reeves, right? Remember?
Yeah.
He needs to know how to learn, I know Kung Fu. And like after they plug him in, and then he learns how to fly a helicopter, and they are plugging in that data to his brain. Well, we have to do that too. And so imagine like all those cars like flying by you in the opposite direction. You just got to study that driver, that driver, that driver, that driver. And then all of a sudden you see a driver that is looking the other way. Like we've all seen it, right? Like they're making the turn. They see us quickly, and then they like look away, act like they didn't see us. And there's that moment in your brain where you go, well, that was weird.
Mm-hmm.
That's the stuff that we're trying to do as the TFO. The truly great TFOs are the ones who can rapidly evaluate a person for that moment in time and go, that was weird. So like in one of our e-courses, the example we use is this guy did a beer run. It's like a petty theft from a liquor store. He's trying to get away, and the TFO is observing him and sees the guy cut the corner on the grass. Like he's walking a walkway out to the sidewalk, and then it intersects 90 degrees with the sidewalk, right? Well, instead of taking that concrete all the way, he cuts the corner of the grass. And it's funny, when we show that in classes, you see about half the people, like there's a murmur in the classroom where suddenly people are like, oh, and those are the ones, that spot it. Those are your street cops that are like, that was different compared to what most people would do maybe in that certain situation. But ultimately it's an infinite amount of tells. There's no way to say like, well, let me give you the book of tells. But we need to be able to, in seconds, look at somebody and determine if their behavior is essentially normal for the accepted, societal norms. And, really what it boils down to is you think about like what you would do. If you were walking out to the sidewalk to your car and you hadn't just done a beer run, you go walking down the sidewalk, you take your time. You're not looking to split a second off by cutting the corner. That's a sign of maybe nervousness or, trying to get away. And then as we continue to watch that guy, you see him glance back over his shoulder a few times. And so like, imagine this, you're a TFO, you respond. This is an example I just used the other day. You respond to a call looking for, let's just say a burglary suspect, last seen going into a public park. So imagine the park, you got people out there, like picture yourself in that situation right now. If you were at the park, you're playing Frisbee with your buddy, you're, throwing the ball for your dog, hanging out, generally like uninterested in anything going on. And so the TFO now is overhead and they're just like scanning the crowd. Like, where is the tell? I don't have a description. And, maybe they're like just seeing like it's this very like, it's the same way we would do an IR search. You kind of like glaze out your eyes a little bit. You're not necessarily individually focusing on one person yet, but you're just kind of looking at the broad picture. I'm baselining this moment in time for this set of this specific situation. Like, what is everybody doing here? And then you spot one guy that's like everybody else is looking, staring at their dog, whatever, people walking by. And then you got the one guy that's like looking up at the helicopter. You just see this one face turned up towards you or towards the aircraft. And, I do that because I'm interested in helicopters and planes. And, we all do, any pilot's going to like stop and watch a plane go over. I think that's a norm, right? But then like there's going to be that second too long that this guy does it where you're like, okay, this guy went from like, oh, wow, helicopter to now like helicopter. Is it looking for me? And but that's the difference in that moment in time from what the other people are doing compared to what he's doing. And now you're individually focusing on that guy. What is this guy up to? And now you've now baselined him or her or but you're baselining them compared to what everybody else is doing. So I'm going back to like the driving scenario is like all these cars are going by you, and then there's the one that just holds your gate, like you lock eyes for just a second too long, or you lock eyes and then they look away, or suddenly they like jerk the wheel a little bit. So there's no way to have the book that says all those, but that's going to come from experience, being able to identify that. And now the second part of that is, well, how do you get there? It's not something you can teach. You have to learn it. And that's why ideally the TFOs grow up through a department. They start out working the street. It's like weightlifting. You've got to start out with the lightest weight. In fact, you might even start with just a PVC pipe, like practicing the movement.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you did that as a baby cop. And then now, like, you started working you made like basic traffic stops. And then you started like, this one, something going on, a little different here. Something suspicious. This person wouldn't look at me, or, they quickly darted around the corner. Like there's the stuff that starts to stand out, and you build this database in your mind of infinite tells. So then you just know, like, your body is going to, or your brain is going to be the one that reacts to it and goes, oh, that was weird. And then you're going to process it, as opposed to like, okay, I'm looking for anybody that might cut the grass or cut the corner on the sidewalk to get away a little quicker. Or I'm looking for anybody that's looking up at the aircraft. You might get them mistaken with some pilots. So going back is that the key is, well, how do you build that? And especially it's like, let's say a new TFO gets into the seat. These days, a lot more junior, like experience tends to be lacking just with the turnover and everything. And so what I recommend is not just looking at people during a radio call, but you should be, if you are not working a call, you are just looking at people. You're using that sensor. You're zooming in on people. What's going on? What's this guy doing in this moment of time? What's a normal reaction? And then you're going to start seeing stuff where you're not even on a call and you go, oh, that's kind of weird. Like one night I was covering a traffic stop, and I'm covering the officers, and I've got like a little wider field of view, and I see a guy in his backyard. I'm kind of like keeping an eye on him. It's later at night, and smoking a cigarette. And so then eventually puts the cigarette out, but he kind of lingers there for a little while. And then it's almost hard to describe, but the way his body language was, I could tell like he keeps checking what's going on with the cops. Well, maybe he's on our side, and he's like, I want to keep an eye on these guys, make sure they're safe. But maybe it's the other side too. Like, what's going on? Why are they paying attention to the officers? And it was just a combination of head checks and some lingering. And, he's not at the fence line staring at these guys, but, he keeps checking over. Like I see him flicking his head over there. And so, that gets stored away in my mind. But that doesn't come until you've had the reps of just thousands and thousands of human, I call them interactions, where you just watched what somebody does. And that's why cops wear sunglasses, because we don't want to give away exactly where we're looking. We're looking at their eyes, their mouth, their nose, like how they tilt their head. What are their hands doing? What are they looking at? All the time, I'm looking to see it. I'm staring intently at their eyeballs because I want to see, well, where are they looking? Are they looking at my gear on my belt? That's an indication of something, are they looking away? Are they looking for that escape route? Like, you should be human polygraphing as many people as possible, and especially in the air. You're looking at everybody. Hand control is in your lap the entire time. It never gets put away. And if you're not on a call and it's nighttime, you're in IR trying to tune your picture. You're looking at people. What's this guy doing? What are they doing? What's a totally normal person doing? Or somebody that is, they're out walking their dog. Are you worried about them casing a neighborhood? No, that's a good indication of somebody who's maybe not doing something that is suspicious, or, they're minding their own business, or quote. But then, you see somebody that's like walking a little bit too slow, or like take cars, for example. See, I told you, there's not going to be enough time for me to answer this, but I'll give you the best I can. But like, so take cars. One of the things we train people is how to look for like the Uber or the ride share for the suspect. That's happening all the time now. They're, instead of just calling their buddies to come pick them up to evacuate them out of there, they know they can order up a ride on an app and have a car show up and be their getaway car. You can spot an Uber. There's a very distinct difference between somebody who's driving with purpose and an Uber who's looking for somebody, or, whether it's an Uber or their buddy, it's their getaway car. And so now you're watching, you see like somebody who knows that they're going to their house, slow down, make the stop, make that intentional right turn. It's like they're driving with confidence. And when they're driving without the confidence, you see it like slow down, intermittent speed, they kind of speed up, slow down. I mean, think about it, like if you were looking for somebody and now that's starting to look like, man, is that an Uber? Is that a getaway car?
Mm-hmm.
And send an officer over to contact them. And I'm telling you, it's crazy how often it works. They'll contact them. Hey, are you an Uber? You look for somebody? Yeah, I got a request to pick somebody up from here. Oh, yeah, well, we're looking for somebody. Where are they asking you to pick them up? And then you get the dot on their phone, send the air crew over there. And I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, their guy's standing there. But it takes spotting the behavior. And so the Ubers are a good way to practice that. But it's not just isolated to people. It's cars. It's, what are the dogs in the neighborhood doing?
Mm-hmm.
Dogs will give away people all day long. You see a dog that's sleeping on the porch, they don't care. All right, guy's running out there. But you see a dog that's like up, they're pacing, they're circling, they're going back and forth on the fence. Might be a good indicator. Dogs are the best poker players if we could talk to them and know what was going on in their brain. They are the masters at human behavior, but we can do a pretty good job too. So I don't know if that answers your question, but at the end of the day, it's just infinite. There's so many, but you have to be able to see for that moment in time, what is the person's normal behavior? Then what is the data point? Like if you were to graph their data, that data spike, which is basically a polygraph, I want to know what's going on with that data spike right there. Boom, there it is. All right, I'm going to keep an eye on this. And then that's when you're sending the street guys over like, hey, I got a possible here. This guy's worth checking out, for these reasons. But that's why the truly great PFOs are the ones who they spent time on the street. They really dug that. They went to the aircraft, and then now they're like, even more so, I need to compensate to be a master in human behavior and, play this poker game from there.
I think kind of in summary, and I used to talk about this when we had ride-alongs, given the totality of the circumstances you're looking at, is what you're seeing normal. If it's not, then it deserves some more attention. I like how you likened it to poker. Like you're playing poker. I think that's genius.
You play poker with your buddies, and what are you doing? You're watching your buddy like, oh, really? You want to go all in? Or, am I going to call your bluff?
Yeah. Well, man, this is, I know it's a podcast recording that could go hours, and it's a course that you could probably spend multiple days going over video and data sets that we've talked about. But I think you did a really good job answering that question in kind of a given short amount of time. So thank you, Nick, for your expertise. Thank you for what you're doing for the industry. What tactical flying is doing for the industry worldwide is pretty amazing. So thanks for spearheading that, and thanks for answering this question.
Absolutely. I appreciate the kind words.
Yes, sir. 100% mean it. And we'll catch you soon.
All right. Sounds good, brother. Be safe.
All right. See ya.
Talk to you.
Time to close up the hangar. Thanks for joining us on the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts.